Page 3 is the disadvantages of common knives. Why do we talk about junky knives?
Raise the value of the Cutco.
Exactly. Builds the value for Cutco. Excellent, Kayla. Kayla, right there. It builds the value for Cutco, and it also establishes a problem. Cutco is the solution for all of life's problems, but you have to have a problem first before you have a solution. So I want you to make your junkiest, nastiest, grossest face. Can everyone show me your ugly face? Give me like your gross, nasty, like your vomit face. Have you ever, has anybody ever, like, you know when you throw up a little bit? Like, have you ever like thrown up just a little bit and you swallow it? You guys know when that happens? And you like get that tangy taste in your mouth. Or if you were like really thrown up and like a couple hours later you like shoot like a nugget out, like it's still like lingering, and you're like, ooh. Like that okay. That face, good. Kyla, that face you're making, that's the face you have to make when you talk about junky knives, because you can't like prance around the kitchen and be like, oh, Mrs. Jones, they're unsanitary and unsafe, and and they're just be like, okay. Right? You have to be grossed out. You have to be like the nastiest, grossest face you can ever make, like just vomit on the table. If vomit doesn't gross you out, think about like your best friend's grandma naked, like, okay. That's the face you have to make when you talk about junky knives, right? So everyone, put your junk face on as we read. Mrs. Who?
Jones.
Most people have the world's most expensive set of what?
Knives.
The average knife set is designed to last how many years?
2 years.
So most households waste a ton of money replacing cheap knives over and what?
Over.
Over and what?
Over.
You probably know this better than I do, but cheap knives have a lot of what?
Problems.
There are two types of what? Handles. The first is wooden handles. Wooden handles are attractive when they're what?
New.
But they are extremely what?
Unsanitary.
Gross face. Make your gross face. Say unsanitary with a gross face. It's got to sound a little nasally too, like unsanitary. Gross. They absorb liquids, bacteria, grease, and germs and retain what?
Odors.
In several states, restaurants don't use wooden handles because of what?
Sanitation.
In fact, it's illegal. In restaurants, anybody ever worked in a restaurant before? In the back of restaurants in the kitchen, it is illegal to use wooden handle knives. You only have plastic back there, right? Because wooden handle knives are so disgusting and so nasty. I'm going to pass around these wooden handles so you can feel how gross they are. When you hold this handle, I want you to get like a good feel to it. Like get a little grip to it, and you're going to feel it's like a little bit grippy, a little bit gross, a little bit just, you know, it's like that tacky feeling to it. Wooden handle knives, they absorb moisture, odor, bacteria. It all grows from the inside out. Wood is a living, breathing thing, right? So inside the wooden handle knives, there are living things crawling inside the wooden handle knives. There are microscopic insects and bacteria in these wooden handle knives that you're holding right now. Every single wooden handle knife in the world has living things crawling around in the bacteria, mold, grease, germs. You see the little, like the rings around the rivet? You see the dark rings around those rivets there? That's the mold and bacteria seeping out of the knife. The entire inside of the knife looks like that. It's illegal to use in restaurants, in the kitchens, in the back because of sanitation. If it's illegal to use in a restaurant because it's so nasty, why would you ever want that in your kitchen? Right? Would you agree with that? It's absolutely disgusting. And then when they hold that handle, that all goes in their hands, and then they touch their food, they touch their kids. It's horrible, horrible. And if you make a really gross face and you get them grossed out with wooden handles, they'll never want to use a wooden handle knife ever again in their entire life. So you make the grossest face you can and tell them how nasty it is. Now, my customers, every time I talk about that, I would be so grossed out that on many occasions, they would take their knives, their wooden handle knives like this, and they would just drop it in the trash. They would be like, all right, what do you have? You know, it was, so you're establishing a problem, but wooden handles are gross. Who's got wooden handle knives at home? Who's immediately going home and throwing away all of your mom's knives? It's disgusting. Disgusting. All right, so that's wooden handles. Plastic handles are usually cheaply what?
Constructed.
So they melt, chip, crack, and what?
Great.
They are slippery when wet, which is extremely dangerous while you're what?
Cutting.
Okay, so plastic handles, plastic is just really cheap, okay? So it's going to crack, it's going to chip, they're going to fall apart. They're always hollow on the inside, so it's just that plastic shell. They're also really slippery. Anybody ever slip off a knife, like when your hand is wet or the handle's wet, you ever slip off it? Really dangerous. All accidents with kitchen knives, almost all of them, happen with plastic handle knives that are really dull, because then you're pushing really hard, this is a dull knife, you slip off, you cut yourself. Really, really dangerous. Also, plastic handle knives are glued in. The blade is always glued into the handle, so it only goes back part way, and they fall apart and they loosen. It's really dangerous. So plastic handle knives, super dangerous. Now, do you see where it says concerned face on there? You want to make the concerned face because you're concerned for their safety. Now, how do you make a concern face? You're like, what does a concern face look like? Ask yourself that question out loud. What does a concern face look like? And that's a concern face. Okay? So just ask yourself that out loud, and you got the face. All right? So you're concerned for their safety because they're super dangerous. All right, those are the handles. Any questions with the handles? Easy enough? Okay. Common knives are constructed very what? Most knives have a partial what?
Tang.
With less what?
Steel.
Making them weak and what?
Unbalanced.
Thank you, Dom. Dom is the greatest. It was like 10 minutes. He already went to the store, bought all the stuff that I didn't have. You're the greatest. Love this. Like, you're doing a great job with it. All right, so can I show you the peeler on the carrot, though?
Yeah.
Oh, this is so sick. Okay. This is. The no-look peel. Just. It is. And you smile every time you just back up. Look at this. It was worth your trip to the grocery store just so I could do that.
Awesome.
Is that awesome or what? You guys like that? All right. So, perfect. All right. So you got. Oh, thank you. All right. So, so partial tang. So the tang is how far the steel goes back into the handle. If you can see it going all the way back, that's called a full tang. Full tang is good. Partial tang is when it only goes back part way. Partial tang is bad. The reason is because a partial tang, when the steel only goes back part way, it doesn't have very much strength or balance, so it cracks really easily, and the knife loosens and comes apart. So the more steel, the better. If you can't see the tang, if you can't see it like this, this is like this. It's a partial tang because it only goes back part way. It's always glued or pressed in. So, for example, this knife, based on the rivets, how far would you expect this to go back? All the way. That's how far it goes back. This is a normal knife. This is every plastic handle knife is just like that. It's a little nub. Is that very strong, very balanced? No. So the tang is how far the steel goes back. Really important in a knife. All right. The rivets are made of what? Brass, which expands, contracts, and loosens, creating unsanitary what?
Gas.
Perfect. All the moisture and bacteria, it gets into the knife through those rivets, and that's why it's nasty and moldy. Like, that's just mold. That's not like decoration. That's mold. And that's what the whole inside of the knife looks like. Okay. There are two types of steel. There's carbon steel, which is what? But it what? Which is unattractive and so you can't buy these anymore. You can't go to a store and buy a carbon steel knife, but Grandma has one of these in the bottom of her drawer. The reason is because it's super old. It's really strong. Carbon steel is a strong metal, but it's like a rusty muffler. Where does all that stuff go when you cut? So nobody uses these anymore, but carbon is a really tough metal, carbon steel. So you might see these on the bottom of the drawer every once in a while in Grandma's house, but otherwise you're not going to see them very much. Stainless steel, they look good. Stainless steel looks good, but it's a soft metal, so it won't stay what?
Sharp.
And it's difficult to what?
Sharp.
Okay, so stainless steel is the shiny stuff. So it's shiny, but shiny doesn't mean sharp. It's a misconception with knives. Shiny doesn't necessarily mean sharp. Stainless steel, does that sound very sturdy? Does it sound like a really strong metal? No, it's cheap. Stainless steel is really soft, so it's going to go dull very, very quickly. So most knives, they go dull right away. The first time you use it, they start going dull, and they end up being just garbage. So that's stainless steel, just cheap and soft. Have some of your knives gone dull over the years, Mrs. Who?
Jones.
And she's going to say what? Yes, all of them. There are two types of what?
Edges.
Two types of what?
Edges.
Serrated edges rip and tear your what?
Food.
And cannot be what?
Resharpened.
Okay, so serrated edges, it cuts with the point. So serrated edges, it's like the saw. Okay, serrated edges are like the saw. They rip, they shred, they tear. There's actually no cutting surface to a serrated edge knife. It's not sharp at all. It's just those really pointy tips. Now, what dulls a knife is the cutting board, right? Not the food. A tomato is not going to dull a knife. So when I cut with a serrated edge knife, every time it hits the cutting board, what happens to those points? They dull, they wear away. They cannot be resharpened. They have to be replaced. So as soon as those points wear away, it doesn't work anymore. But even while they are sharp, it's going to make a really nasty cut. It's like rips and shreds and tears. Straight edges, they make a smooth cut, but they have to be sharpened what? Constantly to remain what? The reason is because a straight edge, the entire edge hits the hard cutting board. So every time you cut, the entire knife goes dull. So they recommend that you sharpen your straight edge knives every time you use them. Can you picture mom sharpening her knives every time she uses it? Like, how weird would that be? Like, dinner time, like, that's really scary. So nobody does that. So most people end up using really dull knives. The more dull the knife is, the more pressure you put on, and the more likely you are to slip and what? Cut yourself. So it's really dangerous to use dull knives. All of our competitors, all the top brands out there, they're straight edges. There's no such thing as a high quality serrated edge knife. Serrated edge knives, it's like in the knife world, they're garbage. Nobody uses them. All of the high quality knives out there are straight edges, and then the problem is you have to sharpen them all the time. Okay. The hard cutting surface is what dulls a knife, not the food. Both these edges directly contact the cutting board, dulling them what? A dull knife is more dangerous than a sharp one because you have to push what? All right, complaints of low quality what? Knives. Low quality knives cost a lot of money over what?
Time.
The average junk knife costs how much?
$10.
Average, how many knives in a set?
8.
So how much is that for a junkie set? Replaced every 2 years for 40 years. How many replacements? So that's $1,600 on junkie knives. Like this box here is probably a couple $1,000s worth of junkie knives. Like nobody would use them because they're garbage, but they just build up over time. So most people don't realize that they're going to spend a lot of money. The average household spends $4,000 to $5,000 on kitchen knives over a lifetime. And people who have junky knives, they don't realize it because it just adds up, a little bit over time. But the average household spends $4 or $5 grand on knives over a lifetime. Now with high quality knives, people that buy like the expensive ones, they don't have to buy it as often, but they add up too. The problem with high quality knives is they have to be sharpened what? They have to be hand washed, they're not dishwasher what?
Safe.
And they have to be replaced every 7 to 10 what?
Years.
So those are the disadvantages of the low quality knives, but also the high quality knives bought in stores.